I'm Tyler Frater, alongside Richard A. the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Good evening.
It is Monday, January 13th, 2025. Follow us on youtube.com/gamingdiscourse, patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. You can support us for $2, $4, $7, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord server, and more fun stuff like that. We have two big stories, both of them pretty complicated. One of them I'm not even sure how to summarize. It may be best that you just go to People Make Games YouTube channel and watch it yourself, but we'll talk about it later. We had our favorite games of 2024 last week. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to be back to like regularly scheduled programming. But now we finished. So I'm assuming everybody on the show has finished all the games we wanted to play in 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Nope.
We powered through it. We're done.
No way.
Metaphor, 100-hour Metaphor Refantasio. We all did that run the past week. We're done, so we're ready to move on to 2025, correct?
I can't even remember what I beat in 2024. That was even like... I feel sad. It was a bad year for me.
Have you been playing anything recently?
No. I mean, Marvel Rivals, but I mean, that's it.
I have not heard anyone talk about that.
Oh, yeah?
So
Marvel Rivals is fun. I've been thinking about it a lot. It is a very fun game to play, but I think that the obvious comparison is Overwatch, of course, just with Marvel characters. I do think that Overwatch plays way, way, way better.
Oh, yeah?
It feels better to play. We'll say that. Like, you're playing as Reinhardt. Well, you guys play the PC version, right? Of Overwatch? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
So, maybe you can get the same idea, but I play console for Overwatch, and like when I like swing Reinhardt's hammer, I like feel it, like in your controller, the rumble, like you kind of like feel those things.
Yeah, Overwatch has always done that really well.
Yeah, like when you like zip around as Tracer, like you can kind of feel it. You get the semblances of what it's supposed to feel like.
Lucio's parkour is still like some of the best parkour.
Oh yeah. I'd agree. With Marvel Rivals, it kind of has the same problem, I feel like Paladins does, and Wolfenstein is another good example. So you can't really feel these things happening. Everything feels very light and very loose.
Okay.
So I don't feel like when I'm playing as Storm, like I shoot my like lightning bolts when they hit people, I don't really feel them. Like granted, they're like small, like like kind of dagger things I'm throwing, but I don't get the same good like feel in my brain that I would. Yes. So, and I think right now, still, even though we're on like season 1, I think it's a month and a half in of Marvel Rivals being around. It's still kind of loosey-goosey. Everyone's kind of just playing and doing their own thing and kind of choosing whatever feels good or choosing what works. And it's still fun though, and I think that's why people are sticking around. I got a tidbit about it later, but the art direction is insane. It's insanely cool. And whenever I don't know if you've seen anything from the game, but when you go to the character selections, they're all portraits, but when you hover over them, the character comes out of the portrait like kind of halfway, and they like do a pose and stuff, and the effects that go through all of that stuff. The beginning UI seems a little complicated at first, but when you go into all the menus, every like locale that's shown and every selection that you can make is all very well thought out, and all of the characters are so very obviously. It's redundant to say this, but they're so very obviously like those characters. Like in Avengers from Crystal Dynamics, they all looked like Captain America or Iron Man or whatnot, but they had something we all made fun of. They had that very
it was indistinct. Well, it was indistinct, but also it was that scene in Spaceballs that you didn't capture them, you captured the stunt doubles.
Right.
It
yes.
was very
exactly. Very stunt double
it
look.
It kind of looked like it kind of looked like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris, whatever his name is, but at the same time, it didn't look like them.
Right.
So there was just no distinction. There was no like interesting. At least when like, I don't know, in the Spider-Man games, I think they gave Peter Parker sort of a unique-ish look.
Yeah,
Miles
they did.
Morales
I
has
think
like
so.
so it's like they didn't do anything to make the characters out of their suits
Right.
look distinct or cool. Is that kind of what you're getting
Yes,
at?
that's what I'm getting at, and I think they took it a step further because there are very good examples of them understanding how the characters should look and how the characters look in other ways. Probably the best example would be Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch in the comics, she's I believe Romanian, so she's supposed to have a darker.
Correct.
She's supposed to have a darker complexion. Well, now obviously she's played by Elizabeth Olsen in the films, which perfectly fine. She does a great job, but Elizabeth Olsen is very fair skin.
Yeah.
So in Marvel Rivals, Scarlet Witch, very tanned, and like she has the darker complexion. She looks great, but they do have a Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness skin for her, in which the skin is way lighter. It looks a little more like Elizabeth Olsen, not exactly, but they did an incredible job of. They have all the movie counterpart skins, so when you go to them, you know they're from those versions of
that makes sense.
the movies.
Yeah.
And so I think they did a really good job at that. Very, very fair battle pass system. Pretty much like the Helldivers battle pass skin. So you buy one and you can continue to unlock that one forever. I think I only paid $5 for like battle pass, and I don't have to pay for the next one until I get enough credits, whatever, to unlock the next battle pass. However, every single thing in the game can be obtained by just playing. Obviously, like everything else, it'll take a lot longer if you're just doing free to play. But even then, the way that the characters look in their default skins, like that's who you want to play as. So I don't think that's a problem for everyone else. They have this really cool idea, and I haven't explored it a lot, so I can't go too in depth with it. They have team ups. So if you are on a team where like Magneto and Scarlet Witch are together, then they have a special team up ability.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I forgot what it does because they all do different things.
Yeah, I've had this idea for Overwatch since I saw the first trailer, because in the first trailer there's a part where Winston throws Tracer. And when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, are you going to be able to like is there's going to be like ultimate moves where you and another player can like do a thing together?"
I wish it was that in depth.
And that never happened. But I always thought, wouldn't it be cool if like two characters could interact for like a dual special or something?
Yeah, that would be cool. And I wish it was that
neat.
in depth, but it's not. It's more like other types of buffs.
Okay.
But it's still a neat idea. There are those things like Hulk can pick up Wolverine and throw him like in the comics. And if you play as any small character like Jeff the Shark or Rocket Raccoon and someone is Groot, you can just go up to Groot and press like circle and you will jump on Groot's back. So
that's awesome.
There are very little like everything about it, despite being made by NetEase, despite being a free to play game, there's a lot of love behind a lot of it. And the story that is given seems interesting. Dr. Doom from current day and Dr. Doom 2099 are screwing with the multiverse, but you get to see really neat things like, oh, what if Black Panther like took their tech and just explored the cosmos with it? So now you have like in Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't know if you remember Nowhere, it's that floating skull.
Yes, yeah.
It's like, oh, there's like, it's a Black Panther skull now. That's just or not a skull, but a Black Panther like head just kind of like floating above this planet. There's like Spider-Man 2099. There's just like a planet of spider people, like spider men. And that's a really cool one because one of them is this she's a spider girl and she has her like mask half on and she has like hair coming out and she's like hanging out at the start and you can talk to her. You can like press a button and she'll talk, but you're supposed to lead her. It's a push map. You're supposed to lead her to the end to do something. They show like little cutscenes of what happens at the beginning of end. But there's a lot of thought gone into it, and I think the game is very fair from a free-to-play standpoint, and it's fun. And I think that's why people are playing it and sticking with it, just because it's fun and it's not.
So are there healing?
Yes,
because like when I think of superheroes, I don't think all superheroes sort of have offensive capabilities. Like
yes,
I don't think of like you can put superheroes into classes like tank or scout. Like you could like sure Spider-Man's skinnier and he's fast, so he could be like a scout type character, a tracer type character. obviously Hulk's going to be your tank.
Yes.
Captain America could be DPS. He's, you know, I don't know.
a tank.
He's a tank too.
He's a tank, yeah.
But what the point I'm trying to make here is you can kind of imagine those things, but when it comes to like support classes or healing classes, so what heroes fill those roles?
There's definitely people who they've kind of taken liberties with. Invisible Woman, who just came out recently. She is a healer.
Okay.
But she's kind of this really interesting. I really love her style. She's a healer / tank.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
No, not her herself is not a tank, but what she can do is whoever you're pointing at, you can press L2 and she'll throw up a personal shield for that person right in front of them.
Interesting.
But that shield will also heal them if they stay next to it or behind it.
Okay.
She can shoot people with like force because she has like a force field, so she shoots people with force. But if you, with her and a couple other characters, Luna Snow and I think Mantis, if an ally is in front of what you're shooting, it'll hit them and heal them as it's on its way to attack people. So,
I'm assuming you could just shoot that to heal people then too,
yes,
right?
Exactly, yeah.
Cool.
And her ult is kind of a double-edged sword because what she does, she throws down a huge cone. Everyone in that cone not only gets healed, but they turn invisible as well. And that's really cool, but it's a double-edged sword because if you're the enemy team, you see that cone, you know everyone's inside of the damn cone. Yeah. So if you take Iron Man and use his ult, you can
that's like the catch-22 of a smoke grenade.
Exactly.
You use a smoke grenade to get past the machine gun nest, and guess what that machine gun's gonna do?
Yeah. There's like Jeff the Land Shark is kind of this like obscure Marvel character that everybody loves now, but he's kind of like a shark dog.
Okay.
But he can go into the floor and like swim around, but he's like Moira in a sense.
Okay, I've never really played Moira that much.
He shoots out a jet stream, and anybody in that jet stream of water gets healed.
Awesome. Okay.
And then he can lob like condensed water bombs to people and hit them. Luna Snow is kind of like Lucio. Her ult is like Lucio's. You can go between like healing and then speed or damage boost. Can't remember, but yeah, there's a handful of them. Who else is a healer? I can't remember. Mantis is a healer from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay,
and that kind of makes sense. Like she can do other things, but I mean,
didn't she have some kind of capability like that in the movies?
Possibly.
Did she not heal somebody?
I can't remember. Yeah, she probably did.
I thought Mantis healed somebody in the movies, but maybe I'm thinking of something else. I don't know.
Yeah,
Disney movies from the past few years all kind of merged together. Maybe I'm thinking of Rey from Star Wars.
But, you know, of course, because there's so many people to choose from, everybody's kind of thinking of things. Like, I know Emma Frost, I think, is supposedly a character coming out, and everybody's, despite her, like, small frame, she turns into Diamond, so everybody's kind of like, well, she could be a tank. You know,
sure.
There's no restrictions when it comes to certain people.
That's pretty cool.
Which is really cool. Magneto is a tank, which is really awesome. Of course, Groot is a tank. Hulk is a tank. A lot of people are. I forgot what it's called. Strategist is what healers are called.
Oh, okay.
And I forgot what the other two are called. I can't remember. But anyways, it's very fun. It's very fun.
That sounds awesome. Maybe I'll give it a try. I don't know. I haven't. It's hard to get into games like that because back in the day when I played Overwatch a lot, I had 3 or 4 people I would play with.
Yeah.
So team-based games like that, but maybe if I just played as a healer, it'd be easier. Because
maybe not. You know, still the same problem. Still, you know, is across all of those team-based games.
Healers
regarding
just get abused the whole time.
Yeah. Well, you know, actually, the pushback on no healers in Marvel Rivals has been so large. Not no healer characters, but people not choosing healers.
Yeah.
That a lot of people are starting to play healers now.
Okay, interesting.
But it also helps that those healers can also effectively deal damage as well. I think that's probably a big problem in those games is that Overwatch specifically, most of your healers, you either heal or you die because you don't have any sort of like really good defense mechanisms.
That's the thing. Everybody discounts medics. I play when I play squad, if I'm not a squad lead, I play as a medic.
Oh yeah.
And everyone's always like, "Oh, the medic, you can drive the truck back and get resources." And I'm like, "Okay, well, when the entire team gets downed by a grenade and no one's there to res you, you'll remember that I'm driving the Lodge truck back to base."
I love playing medic in Battlefield specifically.
Yep, that was the same here. Yeah, I played. That's so weird that like team-based fighters don't. That there's like a medics shortage because. I don't know, it just feels like growing up, all I did was play medic classes for different games. It seemed like a ton of people did, but anyway, whatever. Okay, any other thoughts?
No.
Connor, what have you been playing? Anything interesting? Anything fun?
No.
Okay.
I don't play video games anymore.
I'm
I
sorry.
just work on them.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So let's see. I've been playing. I've had the past week. I've had like a staycation for the past week. So I've been playing a bunch of different stuff. So I could talk about a lot of things, but I'll try to narrow it down to a few things. I've hopped back into Veilguard. I've been swapping between Veilguard, Black Myth Wukong, and Star Wars Outlaws. And just a bunch of others. But those were the three that I was like going to try and focus on. And whenever my mood changes, I kind of jump between the two. I was starting to have a lot of fun with Star Wars Outlaws, and then I started to get bored by it. I was like, okay, I'll go back to Veilguard. Veilguard, yeah, man, I have a lot of mixed feelings on Veilguard. Veilguard is like a color wheel. It's like sometimes it's blue and other times it's red, and it can just slip between those colors at a moment's notice. It's just really strange. I had a scene that was really cool, character moments that are really cool, but then the writing like changes and it feels like it's written by somebody else. Because then the characters become overly nice, or the dialogue lacks teeth, or like, I don't know, conviction or something. And that's when it gets really disinteresting. And then sometimes it picks up again and it gets really interesting again. So it, I don't know, it has struggle. It struggles with its tone. It struggles with its overall story, because the story is still pretty much, there are two gods who want to take over the world and you have to stop them. There's a lot of lore, but I don't know, unless you're super into Dragon Age lore, that stuff for me kind of falls flat, because lore isn't story. I don't know. Revealing something that had happened in the past just is not an interesting like narrative device to drive your story with, in my opinion, because it's things that already happened, you know, and rather than what's going to happen. It was the same thing with like Halo Infinite. The entire story of Halo Infinite was learning what happened to Chief and how they lost. And then like at the end it was like, oh, and there's these new aliens you got to fight soon, okay, bye. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, well, what about the future? What about? And it was like, so I think Veilguard suffers from that. The gameplay, it plateaus really quickly, and it does get competitive, and it does I think you have to turn up the difficulty to make it fun, or else it's just a really basic fighting, like a third person hack and slash type thing. So if you up the difficulty, then you'll get some of that RPG out of it. But even then, it's like there's not a ton of, I don't know, a lot of enemies fight the same way. I think the combat just lacks a lot of depth and what's the word I'm looking for? Variety. The combat lacks like a certain variety. I don't know. Your companions have abilities that will like increase your, like buffs that'll increase your damage or make you invulnerable, and I never use those abilities because I never need to.
Okay.
And it's like so just like I assume in Mass Effect, I don't remember, but like a companion has 3 abilities, and if you use one, their abilities all have to
cool down.
Yeah. So you have to choose which one. So it's like, well, I could use the make me stronger buff, but like, I'll just do more attacks because I really don't need to be stronger right now. It's not like I'm hurting. So to me, if you're in an RPG and you're not using buffs, that means there's something wrong with the combat. Because in a good RPG, you're constantly popping those buffs because the combat is designed in a way where you need to use that. Pillars of Eternity, the first one, does an excellent job at this, where it's like you get this spell that is, it makes you immune to fear. Your character won't get scared and run away. It's like, okay, well, when do I use this? And then you learn that dragons and other types of enemies will instill you with fear. So it's like as soon as you fight a dragon, you pop that spell. Now one of the dragon's better abilities is nullified.
Right.
So it's like you learn how to fight a specific enemy. You have a specific spell. You counter that spell. You're a genius. You're playing RPGs. You know? So it's like...
Nah, you get it.
Yeah. But in Dragon Age Veilguard, it's very... I don't know. It does feel like a game that was just... sometimes not in a... not in a lazy or sloppy way, but it feels like a building that, because it had such a tumultuous, like weird development cycle, it feels like a building that was kind of half made, and then they sort of took things down and rebuilt parts of it, and they took things down again and rebuilt other parts of it. And so there are things that just don't go together. I was telling you about a lot of the dialogue, and I've talked about the dialogue a lot. So yeah, I am enjoying Veilguard. If you get into Veilguard, if anyone starts to play it, what I would recommend is play the companion quests, play the main quests. The side quests just aren't that interesting, and they can take a while to complete because the way that the maps are designed, the maps are all like hallways. There's no open map. So it's a lot of running through corridors, following pips on your map, which is fine if like the combat was really good and the writing was really good, but they're both sort of okay. So yeah, I think I got caught and bored because I was doing side quests, and side quests just aren't that interesting.
Right.
And you know, maybe this is a lesson. Maybe the lesson is, if we're going to have side quests and then filler material, have fewer side quests and make the side quests all meaty and narrative heavy, like your Cyberpunks or Witchers or whatever, right? And then if you want to have activities, you can have the little side activities that are just go here, kill these guys, and grab this data slate or whatever, right? And you can have a million of those that the player can do if they want. But it's like, when it comes to side quests, make the side quests meaningful and meaty, narrative heavy, interesting, give them twists. I don't know. I think that's kind of where I'm at with Veilguard. So I'm still enjoying it, but there are moments in Veilguard where it's like, damn, that's fucking awesome. That's really cool. I was in a boss fight and I was like, this is one of the coolest like boss fights ever. And the combat was, was pretty nice and stuff. But yeah, then it went up against its writing and whatnot. And it is strange because sometimes the writing feels like really good. Sometimes the dialogue is really good. And there have been moments where the characters get after each other. There's a moment where your party fails to do something. And so afterward they're meeting about it and they're like blaming each other, and there's conflict. And it's like, oh, cool. Finally we have conflict. We have tension. Characters don't like each other. This is where you can build.
Yeah.
And then like it kind of just gets resolved later on. It doesn't really matter all that much.
Nah.
And so it's like, okay. So it's like the dialogue and the narrative has teeth at some points, doesn't at others. The companions are interesting. People have had a lot of discussions about Tosh. Tosh is non-binary. She struggles with her identity. Tosh is insufferable in a lot of ways because she's like a teenager who is constantly complaining about stuff, and she uses the word crap. I don't understand why they wrote her like this. She'll say like, what the crap is this? Oh, crap. And it's not fun. It's just, it doesn't make sense because she's supposed to be this like she's a dragon hunter. So she's supposed to be this like really hardened, intelligent, like she knows how to hunt dragons. She knows everything about dragons. She can like tell you that if you like show her a dragon scale, she can tell you, I know this type of dragon. This is how you hunt it. This is how it eats. This is where it lives. Like she's intelligent. But then it's like her dialogue is they tried to make her like laid back. I'm not even sure, but the point is this interesting story about like identity, what it means. Am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I non-binary? Like which is really interesting. It all sort of falls flat because she's just so annoying so much of the time because she's just she just complains about things and her dialogue is like really strange. But other characters are, I think, Balara is the same way. Balara is the elf who is a veil jumper, and her character is, you've seen a million of her. Some people say the phrase manic pixie dream girl is sexist. I really don't know, but I mean, she's always like, oh, we'll do this, unless you guys don't want to, or, oh, well, that was tough. Let's keep, like, she's like peppy and fun.
She's that stereotypical indie
yes.
woman character, indie film woman character.
She's like peppy and fun. But again, it doesn't vary from that a whole lot. I don't know. So some of the characters, I feel like they needed to be massaged and worked on more. Other characters, I think Davrin is really good. Davrin's a great warden. and his responsibility is Asan, who is a griffin. He has to take care of this griffin, and he doesn't know if he's ready for it. And I want to say I think his character is one of the better written characters. Yeah, so Imric, that's the necromancer. I think Imric is pretty interesting. But I don't know. So yeah, I'm glad. It's good to see BioWare like stretch its legs again and do something that BioWare should be doing. It is disheartening to see that the game it can just be sort of fluffy and puffy sometimes instead of being real Dragon Age and is inconsistent. But if this eventually leads us to a Dragon Age feature, then
Hey.
I'll be totally for that. Okay, so I'm gonna take a swig of water. Is there anything we want to say before I hit the ad and we move on to the news real quick?
Nah.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Oh God. Okay, hit the ad. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Ubisoft is taking drastic steps to reshape the company. I believe this was first reported by Game Developer. In a press release, Ubisoft said, quote, "Following the strategic and execution reviews initiated by the executive committee a few months ago, Ubisoft is taking decisive steps to reshape the group in order to deliver best-in-class player experiences, enhance operational efficiency, and maximize value creation. Ubisoft has appointed leading advisors to review and pursue various transformational, strategic, and capitalistic options to extract the best value for our stakeholders. This process will be overseen by independent members of the board of directors. Ubisoft will form the market in accordance with applicable regulations if and once a transaction materializes. Operationally, the company will continue to drive significant cost reductions together with a highly selective approach to investments." And then it ends here with Yves Guillemot will form the first galactic empire to better society. No. Star Wars Outlaws and the cancellation of X Defiant led to lower net bookings for the holiday season. Now, I have seen net bookings as a euphemism for player spending. So, but I don't know if every company uses net bookings in reference to player spending.
Okay.
But in any case, I think that bit of context is important. Okay, so I don't know. We talked about Ubisoft a lot. And since I've played Outlaws, I've had like some thoughts about it. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have anything to say about Ubisoft, especially as we enter a year where it seems like, because also Assassin's Creed Shadows was delayed to March.
Again, yeah.
So, and it seems like so much is riding on this next Assassin's Creed. Like, it's terrifying to think that there may be jobs on the line for people that have nothing to do with this Assassin's Creed. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much, but yeah.
Sure. Ubisoft, if I'm thinking correctly, by and large, like Ubisoft, out of most of the game companies out there, have really, really dug into microtransactions as a whole.
Yes.
Out of everyone for the last like 10 plus years. And I don't know if anybody who runs that company like understands or sees what people say about them, because we're tired of it. And it's very blatant in the press release that Ubisoft just plain doesn't care about providing us, people who buy their products, with a good game or a good experience. They simply want money because, as they state plain and simply, they want a capitalistic option to extract the best value for stakeholders, and not necessarily the people who they depend on to give that money to give to the stakeholders. And with news like, what was it, Game Pass, games that are on Game Pass like lose 80% of their premium sales. That came out.
That came out a couple of days ago.
Oh,
really? I didn't know. interesting.
Yeah.
Because Xbox's thing has always been that Game Pass sales don't cannibalize. Now, that's Xbox that has said that, so I don't know. I think, and so that's interesting, because the numbers I think have probably shifted through time, depending on whether or not a game is like day and day release or whatever.
Yeah.
But like I've always been curious about games like Jusant, which I've been playing recently. Where
Oh yes, I know about that one. Yeah.
By Don't Nod, it released. I don't think it released on Xbox Game Pass, but it released later on. So I'm curious, like how that affected the data. But anyway, sorry.
No,
I had not heard
that's
that one.
okay. But yes, we know that a model like that is not sustainable. So what you have to do is attract consumers to purchase your premium product, day and date. So the solution that most people have had that we've talked about for the last maybe 3-4 years is make smaller games with less people, probably not as crazy as graphics, sell it for less.
Yeah, make it more sustainable ecosystem.
Yeah, yes, make it more sustainable. Because I am excited about. Well, I am excited about Shadows.
Yeah,
I do
yeah,
really want to play
too.
it, but and the delay I can only see as a good thing. You're working on it more, but I guess one of the main guys on it is from the crap that was going on with them a couple of years back, so that kind of like dampened my excitement.
Oh,
for
really?
it.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
and I was like, man, damn it. But yeah, I don't want to go into that game and find, and they haven't had it in Assassin's Creed in a while, so I know I'm being facetious with this, but I don't want to see chests that I can't open up until I buy like a $2.49 map to show me where the key is to get to that, but Ubisoft is in some big trouble, and there are obvious reasons why they are in big trouble, but
Yeah.
Guillermo is not listening.
Yeah, and I don't know. I know I have self-awareness, right? We're a small YouTube channel, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm, fucking, I don't know.
A DEI hire?
No, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm like, I'm trying to think of a sports radio guy and I can't think of a single one. I'm not a big deal when I say this person should be fired, right?
Oh, right.
I'm not Mike Lupica, okay? And I'm like, this guy should be fired, damn it, whatever. But I do think that, I don't know, fish rots from the head. A lot of the, Yves Guillemot's right-hand man went down when that Ubisoft cultural fallout stuff happened. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like, I don't know, does Yves Guillemot, is he a monolith? Does he make all these decisions himself? No. But I don't know, you look at the past 10 years of Ubisoft and it's just been stagnation and stuff that hasn't been very good. Teams have tried things. Assassin's Creed revitalized itself. Watch Dogs tried some crazy stuff. But it's like they try a crazy idea and then they don't do anything else anywhere else. And I don't know who makes those decisions or why those creative decisions happen. Star Wars Outlaws, again, Star Wars Outlaws is a game where it's like the scale, it's got this big scale.
Yeah.
It's got this huge open world with a big speeder. The first map, you speed around. And the city you go into, I talked about it when I talked about its art direction, which is fantastic. The city is dense and it's so detailed, and there's all these little... There was one part in this... You can include this in a sustainable future, but there's one part in Outlaws that blew my mind because there's an alleyway in the town. It's kind of out of the way. So I was like, oh, what's in here? So I turn, and at the very end of the alleyway are two stormtroopers, and one of them's kneeling on the ground, and there's a dead body. And so I kind of walked down the alleyway, and one of the stormtroopers stepped in front of me and went, "This is Empire business. Turn around." And I was like, that's such a fucking cool detail. Okay,
that is cool.
You can have that in a game that doesn't break the budget. But like everything together in Star Wars Outlaws, it's like so much of this you don't need. Mm-hmm. So much of this is just space that you want to have your cool speeder bike thing. I don't know. Find a more interesting way to incorporate it. Maybe you don't need a big open world that you ride a speeder bike on. I don't know. I think that's tricky. So it's like the priorities are misaligned for Outlaws. And X-Defiant should have never been a thing. X-Defiant should have been killed, like, on the floor, whatever metaphor you want to use.
Yeah.
It should have been returned to sender. It should have been ejected. I don't know, whatever. But like this idea, because their idea was to make another COD. And it's like, why even try that?
Yeah.
Why go for something so huge? make something more sustainable that people will be excited about. And you'll remember X-Defiant was not X-Defiant when it was first released. It was Tom Clancy's X-Defiant.
Yeah.
And everybody made fun of that, and rightfully so, because at that point the Tom Clancy name already meant nothing, but at that point it just meant less than, it was almost a joke.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like it clearly was a bad idea from the start. And so it's like, who is making these kinds of decisions? And again, it's not about innovation or making good games. It's just chasing trends. And that's frustrating, especially with Ubisoft, who has a portfolio of franchises that has a ton of potential. Like, Ghost Recon, I think there is a market for relatively hardcore mill sims out there that is bigger than Squad. Well, I mean, the market is bigger than like the people that play Squad, right? I think if they did some showing of Ghost Recon, and instead of it being a third-person Far Cry, essentially, it was more of a tactical shooter, a little more rigid, more heavily lean into you actually
the
have
Dark
to
Souls of shooters.
The Dark Souls of shooters. I think people would be really excited for that, right? But instead, it's just a generic third-person shooter that they don't know what to do with, so they shove NFTs in it.
Right.
Everybody makes fun of it, and now it's like, well, what do we do with it? So it's sitting in limbo. I think Far Cry 6 is like the last innovative Far Cry was Far Cry 3. 4, 5, and 6 have all been
I mean, it was all the same.
After that, like Far Cry 1 was interesting and crazy, kind of fucking nuts. Far Cry 2 was really cool, and I think innovative. Far Cry 3 was the last, I think, innovative Far Cry game. Far Cry 3 like started the modern open world, and then Far Cry 4 was like Far Cry 3.5. Far Cry 5 was just more, and Far Cry 6 was even more of more. So it's just, again, there's like no cool or new ideas. It's all just scale. It's big.
Yes.
So it's like, well, why is that happening? I think that's complicated. Assassin's Creed is a trickier beast to nail down because they have tried things with Assassin's Creed. I played and enjoyed Assassin's Creed, the one that is essentially a remake of the first one.
Mirage.
Yeah, I played and enjoyed Mirage, and I understand what they did because Mirage was very limited in its scope. It wasn't super complicated, but that was also the point. It was supposed to be like a slimmed down, focused Assassin's Creed experience. So I think you can give Ubisoft credit for trying something there that probably didn't work out. But again, not everything's going to work out when you try and do things that are creative and cool. Another thing about Star Wars Outlaws that I really dislike, and Ubisoft treats a lot of their games like this, and you mentioned it, Richard. They treat even their single-player games like live service games, and it's really annoying because I don't want to see ads at the main menu. I don't want to have to open Uplay or Ubisoft Connect to get like optional cosmetics. Put them in the game. Stop trying to get me to go to your services. That will crash my PS5, by the way. It's very annoying. So it's like, please stop this shit. Nobody wants you to connect to Ubisoft brand bullshit. Just put it in the game, right? And if you packaged all the DLC that Star Wars Outlaws... Okay, so let me rewind a bit.
Okay.
Star Wars Outlaws gets announced, right? It's like, oh my god, it's open world Star Wars game. It's going to be the greatest game of all time. And then they're like, oh, hey... if you pre-order it, you also get a Jabba the Hutt mission and a fucking Lando Calrissian mission. And what happens? Everybody's like, fucking Ubisoft, cutting content. Because that sucks. That sucks. That's like a game is announced that people have always wanted, open world, outlaw, bounty hunter game, whatever.
Right.
And it's got content with famous characters cut to the side in DLC. That's annoying. So instead do this. Launch Star Wars Outlaws, and then a year later at the Game Awards go... we have an expansion for Outlaws, and you release a whole other thing at maybe a slightly higher price. That gets people excited, just like people are excited for we're excited for Phantom Liberty, right?
Yeah.
Because I think people. It's not that people hate DLC. They also don't hate Richard De the Cruz. No, but it's not that people hate DLC. They hate how it's doled out.
Yeah, right.
They hate how it's constantly shoved in their faces. They hate that single player games now have menus and storefronts similar to free to play games. It's really annoying. It's obnoxious. Like, I don't know. So like I really think Ubisoft, if they just shifted some of their stuff around, you can still have DLC.
Absolutely,
you can still have these optional missions, but put it into an expansion pack that you release 6 months or a year down the road.
Right.
I understand these things. You can't snap your fingers and have it happen. There's pipelines. Teams are working on things, but like, I don't know, the release and reception around Phantom Liberty, I think, shows us again, people do not hate the idea of DLC in a vacuum.
Right.
It's just how it's delivered. And Ubisoft makes a shit ton of DLC. So it's like, maybe you would make more money off of it if you reorganized how you sold it and how you distributed it to people that want to play it. So anyway, I'm sorry. Anything else you guys want? Connor, I can't see you. I'm sorry. So do you have anything to say?
No, I think I've said a lot about Ubisoft in the past, but yeah, they just need to get rid of Yves Guillemot and start fresh, honestly. I know that he doesn't make all the decisions, but he is the figurehead of the company. He is the one that is the person in charge of making sure the ship is going the right direction. And
Sure.
if your CEO isn't doing their job, maybe it's time to get a new CEO. If your CEO isn't meant to do that job, then why do you have a CEO?
Yeah, and I think part of the problem, it's not, I agree with you. I think one of the reasons it won't happen is the Guillemot family wants to retain control of Ubisoft, which is why they're like, hey, we want to get bought out. And someone's like, I'll buy Ubisoft. And they're like, okay, cool. You bought 49%. And they're like, wait, no. And they're like, yeah, because we want to sell, but not like all the way.
Yeah,
so it's this like halfway thing where they're like, it's like they want to date and live with somebody and have kids together and have a joint income tax return, but they don't want to buy them a ring and get married to them, you know? So it's like they want to do everything but buy the ring, which if you do that in life, it's fine. But the comparison is what I was going for. But like, I had a thought while Connor was speaking, but sorry. The other thing is we know there's a Splinter Cell remake.
Right.
Somewhere. It's being made. Somewhere in
Hopefully.
some room in Montreal.
So is the Prince of Persia remake. So
yeah, something allegedly is being worked on. I think that's going to be another like, and also Beyond Good and Evil 2, but that's never coming out.
Nope.
I don't think that's ever I don't think it's ever going to come out, which is sad. But the Splinter Cell remake, I think, is something that Ubisoft has in its back pocket that could be really beneficial, because stealth games really aren't a thing. We have open world action stealth, but that's not like hardcore stealth where like if an enemy sees you, you die in a split second type of thing, right? Which Splinter Cell was like. So it's like, what would a Splinter Cell remake entail? Well, you're gonna have to have nice lighting because that's part of the stealth, so that's going to be expensive. But other than that, the game does not need to be, one, massive. Doesn't need to have a huge open world. I don't think you even need to make like Hitman type levels where it's like
no,
an immersive sim. You can make things that are relatively linear. Give the player a couple different ways to get around guards. The point I'm trying to make here is, if tomorrow Ubisoft was like Splinter Cell trailer, baby, and it dropped, people would be super excited, and I can't imagine that a Splinter Cell game would have to have anywhere near the budget of like a Star Wars Outlaws, right? So you have a property like that that's sitting there, and again, I'm not going to sit here and say snap your fingers and get people working on it, because people are doing different stuff. They can't just hop over to a new project. But like again, there's a property that has been neglected that probably doesn't need a ton of fucking money spent on it for it to work, and we don't know what's going on at Ubisoft. So don't spend money on X-Defiant, put all those people on the Splinter Cell remake, and I promise you there would be more excitement. I mean, dude, at the Game Awards, could you imagine at the Game Awards, light goes out, and then you just hear, bing, and there's three green dots. People would lose their fucking minds, you know? It's just like, so And Ubisoft has that ability to do that.
They do.
To make
And they don't.
to have their name associated with something exciting.
Yes.
That everybody's anticipating, but they just haven't done it because instead they're like, I got an idea. Why don't we just do Call of Duty like Call of Duty did? And of course that tanks because it's like, yeah, okay. Why don't I just be a quarterback like Tom Brady? It's probably easy. Why don't I just,
You just do it. Yeah.
why don't I just fucking how about we just start a band and be the Beatles? It's just easy. Not that Call of Duty is as good as the Beatles. It's as popular, maybe.
I know in the gaming landscape. Yeah, I get what you mean.
You look like you're about to.
Well, I was just kind of musing at the thought of Hitman, the Hitman series from IO Interactive.
Yeah.
Obviously, and I didn't play much. You've played the Splinter Cells very recently.
Yes, I have.
And I have not. I have not played the Splinter Cell series in a very long time. But you know, those levels weren't particularly large. But much like the Hitman games that came out a lot more recently, or at least the Hitman 3, those levels also aren't incredibly large, but they are dense.
Yes. Yeah.
Entryways, pathways, lots of outcomes to what you mess around with. And Splinter Cell just needs to be that. Or, well, I don't want to say needs because I don't know what it really needs, but it would probably be a lot more attractive to the fans and the larger audience if it was.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
And that's the thing that's totally possible. And Splinter Cell set the stage for that because that's what Chaos Theory was like.
Mm-hmm.
Chaos Theory were levels that were sort of open-ended. You could take multiple paths. The bank is a really good example. The bank's maybe my favorite level in Chaos Theory where I don't actually know if you can go through the front door. I think you can. I've never done it myself. I'm pretty sure you can. But you can also climb to the roof and then you rappel down from the roof, and then there's lasers you have to deactivate, and the bank has 2 wings that have different cameras and lasers and other traps that you have to get by, and of course there's guards everywhere. So, and you can approach it in any direction you want.
Yeah.
And you can knock everybody out and pile all the bodies, or you can ghost it and not touch a single soul.
Wow.
So it's like that's sort of what because I think like Thief was probably the first like stealth immersive sim, maybe. But Chaos Theory took sort of the Splinter Cell formula and put it in that immersive sim formula. Yeah, and I think you're correct in Hitman, modern Hitman, you can sort of trace its design back to Chaos Theory, even though they're drastically different games. Because obviously Hitman's stealth, but you can be seen. It's daylight, you know.
Well, being seen is also like big trouble.
Yeah,
you know,
can, in
game,
certain contexts. But yeah, if you were to you are correct. That is something that I think would absolutely fit. But I don't know. I'm not disagreeing with you or anything. But like, I don't know if it's necessarily necessary.
That's it, right? Yes.
I think you could make a linear Splinter Cell game, and you know, on the way you give multiple paths to get past objectives here, get past a guard here, but you don't have to make a gigantic open level where the player goes through it and has a million different ways to go. Instead, you have a hallway, but there's 5 ways to go about getting through this hallway, something like that, which is totally viable.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if the team making the remake has I don't think they've said anything outside of like some promotional stuff, and then they've
I don't think so either. Yeah.
But yeah, and if Ubisoft does sell, if they sell to a private equity firm, things are just going to get worse because that's what private equity does. And
Always.
I don't know, but yeah, I guess one of the reasons I don't want to say passionate, but one of the reasons I guess I'll just say care. One of the reasons I care so much about Ubisoft is because they have all these IPs that were once innovative, truly innovative, and they have a lot of talent. But it's like I feel like maybe it's the leadership, that's the management that just that like doesn't know what to do with all this great IP and all this great content that they have, which is unfortunate. Anyway, we've talked a lot about Ubisoft. Anything else we want to say before we move on here?
Get rid of Guillermo.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about this people make games video. I'm going to bring up the title because it's about abuse at Brandoville Studios, but there's a couple different angles to the video, which is interesting, and the title hints at that. So the title of the People Make Games video is 100 Slaps, the breaking news the games industry ignored in 2024. I'm going to just recommend you go and watch it. It is long. It is harrowing. It's not easy to watch, but I'm not going to be able to summarize it effectively. So I'll get through like the cliff notes here, but I would really recommend watching it yourself. So a couple of years ago, People Make Games made a video about contractors and external developers in Southeast Asia. That story was about crunch, unplayed overtime, toxic workplace conditions, you name it. They probably talked about it. And I think we even talked about that video on the show. One was Brandoville Studios, which is what this report is about. The story focuses on Krista Sidney, who is a former employee at Brandoville, who was abused by Cherry Lay, who is wife of Brandoville CEO, Cherry Lai, who is wife of Brandoville CEO, Ken Lai. I mispronounced it and said Lay, but we have a little anecdote as to why that is. Anyway, so the details are incredibly hard to stomach, and the abuse is expansive. It's wide-ranging. It's pervasive. Cherry was verbally abusive and controlling. She had Krista physically punish herself, including recording a video of Krista slapping her own face 100 times. People Make Games included like 10 seconds of that video, and holy shit, is it hard to watch. There's also one thing that I can say actually scared me, actually creeped me out. And Krista was forced to slam her head into I think it was a door frame, and then she had to answer questions while Cherry filmed her, and Cherry was telling her to, what did you do wrong? Say you're sorry for this or whatever. Yeah. And you can tell Krista is dazed because she suffered a concussion. Yeah. And I have seen people suffer concussions before. And so it's kind of terrifying to see someone recorded in almost a punishing way, especially when you know the signs of a serious concussion, because I don't know if you've ever talked with someone who has had a concussion, but it's almost like they're dreaming, or it's almost like they're not even there.
Yeah, they're not quite there. Yeah.
They need help, and it's terrifying to think that a person in that state would be interrogated, because a person who is just concussed does not have the mental fortitude to even know what the fuck is going on, let alone answer questions that are, emotionally intense, but whatever. So that was incredibly hard to watch. There's a whole bunch more in the video. I know you watched a little bit of it.
Yeah.
If you just want to give your reaction.
It was very interesting because the Cherry Lai,
yeah.
From the get-go, honestly seemed very, very cult leader-esque.
Yes.
Very cult leader-esque. And one of the very first things that she says to Cynthia, what's her name?
No, it was
Krista.
Krista,
yeah. Said to Krista was literally like, God told me to speak to you.
Yes.
And it was, yes, it is a very hard watch, and it's kind of this hard watch that's just, it sucks to be in this position as someone watching it. It was just kind of comically evil, these situations seemed unbelievable. So it was, and I think it was hard to watch from that standpoint, because it's just, your mind kind of has this how could this have happened? Type of yes,
ridiculous.
It is, yeah.
And there's so much more in the video is almost an hour long.
Yeah, it is.
And almost the entire thing is different forms of abuse.
Right, and then
Cherry imposed on her on her workers.
Right,
and a lot of it on Krista, and it's just there's a
lot of text messages, a lot of emails. Very, very, very tough to stomach, but it is very unfortunate to be on the other side of like the world and seeing this happen and knowing that like there isn't, besides the like government of Indonesia,
Yeah.
there's literally nothing the gaming industry can do or like we can do besides bring stories like this to light. But even then, unless it gets to people who care enough in those higher positions, like
Yeah.
there's probably stories, and there are stories like this just going around everywhere.
And you don't know because so one of the angles, there's two sort of angles that Chris, I don't remember his last name. He does a really good job. I'm just gonna call him Chris
From PMG?
from People Make Games. Yeah. There's sort of two angles he takes of the story, and one of it is the industry's response to this, because the external developers are like a sort of kind of like QA, or sort of this unheralded essential piece of the games industry.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially with big AAA games, so much gets outsourced to, and right now it's like a booming industry in Southeast Asia, as far as I understand it.
Is, yes.
But there's also like big contracting studios in the UK, and like in Eastern Europe and stuff, in Australia. So, in different parts of the world, and they're essential. But it's like when you are disconnected, one, how do you handle if you're starting a game studio right now and you're like, okay, we're gonna make a game and we need all these assets. We're gonna hire an external studio to help us. How are you gonna go about reconciling something like this?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, you don't want to hire a studio where its employees are being forced to slap themselves. So it's like, what do you do? How do you handle that? I think that's interesting, and I think it's something that the industry has to discuss, and it's not an easy thing to figure out. Then the other thing is, like, how do stories like this not disseminate as much? Now, unfortunately, I think this is just a wider issue that has to do with just media in general. If something happens in another country, you're going to have internet barriers, language barriers, right? To find Jakarta news, you have to specifically Google Indonesian news, and then you have to like figure out how to translate things. So it's like, it's more difficult. It's not going to spread on primarily English reading websites, right? So there's just a bias. There's just a bias there that's hard to overcome. And I don't know what the solution to that is. And also there's just the problem of the state of games media. So much of games media is beholden to SEO, which means that's going to affect the types of things that are written. One of the reasons People Make Games can make a story like this is because they're crowdfunded. They're funded by their viewers, right? Or by viewers like you. Thank you. So they can take 4 months and do a story like this because they don't have to worry about making SEO money or whatever, right? So they are in an economic position that allows them to do this that other websites just wouldn't be able to, or can't all the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have your Kotakus who, less now because of Kotaku's ownership, but back in the Jason Schreier days, would write gigantic suites about something, and that would take a long time. But that's not the case with, and that's decreasingly the case, I think, with a lot of like the popular games media websites. So those two angles are interesting. And I don't know how to, like, I obviously have no idea how to solve this. I don't know what a developer should do to make sure that the people that are working on their game, because it's great if you eliminate crunch, at, I don't know, Sucker Punch. It's like, yeah, you eliminated crunch. But if you just hire another studio in another country and they're working unpaid overtime, I don't know, effectively you've done nothing in my book, because you have people working for you that are crunching. So it's like you haven't eliminated crunch because you brought those people into the fold.
Right.
And so your game was not made with zero crunch because people did crunch to get it done. So it's like, what steps do you take? I don't know. I think maybe the best way to solve that problem would be to ask developers, ask people that are in positions where they have to manage that kind of stuff. So it's like, I don't know. And that would probably be the way there. Connor, did you have any thoughts, anything?
I think you guys covered everything I wanted to say.
Yeah, I don't know. I think another. Yeah, there's a lot I could say about games media and stuff like that. But I think, like, again, I think a lot of the problems with how do we report on stories from different countries just comes down to language barriers and internet barriers.
Yeah.
If you remember, there was that excellent piece by a German YouTube channel when they covered Gollum, what happened at Gollum.
Oh, right.
And it was a German YouTube channel, and this German channel is like similar to People Make Games, but they're German. So it's like, if you're watching, you're either watching with subtitles or you understand German fluently. Mm-hmm. But on YouTube, if you live in the States, that gets filtered out because you're not being, unless you watch a ton of German content, and then you watch a ton of German gaming content, that stuff is going to be filtered out because, you know, you're not on youtube.de or whatever, right? You're on youtube.com. So it's like, it's not that you can't access that stuff. It's just you have to put in the effort and think about how do I get through these gates to get to this other content? And how do we get that into the mainstream? I don't know. I think it comes down to aggregation. People like us who try and find these things and talk about them. And outlets like People Make Games or outlets like Aftermath that maybe have the resources that are economically in a position where they can report on these types of stories and they don't suffer blowback or anything like that. But the story had a reasonably happy ending, I guess. Krista did escape from her abuser. She seems in a better place now, hopefully. Honestly, after years like that, it wouldn't be an easy thing to just get away from. I'm sure there's a lot of anger. One thing that I think was really funny was that Cherry Lie, Chris got into contact with her and was like, hey, we'd love to talk to you about, you know, all this abuse. And her response was, I'm in Hong Kong. If you want to meet me in Hong Kong, sure. And Chris said, sure, I'll meet you at Hong Kong. And then she never responded. So I think what happened there was she thought she was being cute by saying, why don't you meet us in Hong Kong? And of course he was like, yeah, sure, I'll buy a plane ticket to Hong Kong and talk to you. Yeah. And as soon as she bluffed and she had like a pair of fives. and he laid down a royal flush and tickets to Hong Kong. And she was like, oh, wait, never mind, I fold. Which I thought was particularly hilarious. But anyway, yeah. Okay. Do we have tidbits?
I got a couple. Yeah.
Yay!
What if I told you?
Connor's not here.
In this world,
Can't do the fun tidbit.
there are bits.
I can. I got two.
There are tids. And Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits.
What do I got here? Let me see.
You just said you. How do you say you have tidbits?
Because I didn't have the page up. I don't remember these things.
Xbox. May the dorks be
That's
with
what you get.
Yeah, there we go.
Filthy human piece of garbage.
All right,
Okay.
I'll accept that. Yesterday was the 20th anniversary of the release of Resident Evil 4. So,
Oh man.
yeah,
Don't tell me that was 20 years ago.
20 years ago, baby.
Ew.
2004. Well, wait, no. 5.
Close enough.
Close enough, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, what a incredible game that's left its long-lasting legacy, and still a formula that third-person shooters use to this day.
Yep.
Looking at you, Silent Hill remake.
Would if we were to make a list of like the 10 greatest horror games of all time, would you include? Would you even make Resident Evil 4? Would you even consider it? Because it's not really that scary.
I would consider it, but I do agree with you. It's not that scary.
Yeah, it's not really. It's more of like a ridiculous action movie.
I would consider the first or second game to be higher on the list. Honestly.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Because the first and second game did a lot to like kind of crawl into like people's fears with like different parts had different fears. Like in the first game, like you fight a giant snake for some reason, and that's like for people who are scared of snakes. Oh wow.
Yeah.
There's in Resident Evil 1. You never played Resident Evil 1, right?
I've played it for like a couple hours.
Okay, so in Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2, there are very big spiders.
Yeah, I remember.
And in Resident Evil 1, there's the famous scene where you walk through a door and the camera angle is coming up from above you. onto the back, and there's a spider just right there, like waiting for you. So they're very scary parts in the original 2 Resident Evil stuff. But I still think it should be in the conversation.
Okay.
I'll just read it and I'll talk about it. Star Wars Jedi Power Battles was released.
Hell yeah.
25 years ago, in the year 2000. It's prepared to get a remaster. It comes out the 23rd. I saw this announcement, and for some reason I didn't think about it until I saw another article today about it. Anyways, in addition to the re-release, the game will have 13 brand new playable characters.
What?
So Aspyr went back into the game code and added 13 new playable characters.
Oh, okay.
Including a rifle droid, Tusken Raiders, and they're one of their more recent announcements, which I saw and I was like, oh, okay, cool, I guess. Why is that a big deal? I realized it's a big deal because he wasn't in the first one. Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think it's very interesting that I don't know why that game to go back and just code in some new characters.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
I think maybe a lot of people that had that game when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably part of it. It's one of
I
those
wish I
games.
could play as this character.
Yeah, and it was a game where you could pick because it was 2000. So so Attack of the Clones came out in 2002. Was it?
Yeah, I think so.
So it's sort of in between movies.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's like you knew Mace Windu was a new thing.
Yes.
All the other Jedi.
Can't wait to play as Kit Fisto.
Yeah, there was a Jedi that had. What's the Jedi's name that has the alien race? Looks like he has a gas mask on. And he gets shot down in Episode 3. He's in a Jedi starfighter. His name is like Plo.
Oh, Plo Koon. Yeah.
Plo Koon. Yeah, like he's in it. He has an orange lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the reasons people are fond of that game is because for the first time you got to use these other Jedi who also had orange lightsaber, purple lightsaber, like these other fun options rather than just the blue and green. And I know there were other, because there was Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Plo Koon, Mace Windu.
Kit Fisto.
Yeah, who was green, who had a green lightsaber. Was there one more or was that it?
I can't remember all the playable characters.
I don't remember if Coyote Mundi was in there or not. He's the guy with the tall head.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Yeah, that guy. Everybody knows.
With a mustache.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he only has one line in the movies. I think it's like, but what about the Wookiees? I think that's it, but that was Attack of the Clones.
Hey, yeah, I mean, he had a point.
Hey!
What about the Wookiees?
Anyway, sorry.
Last tidbit, but it ties into me talking about Marvel Rivals earlier, but they have been able to retain at least 93% of its player count throughout Season 0's release and into Season 1, which was just 2-3 days ago, which is incredibly impressive for a multiplayer shooter.
Popular game.
Yeah, I think it's close to 500,000 players, concurrent players.
I'm just gonna have to try it out just because I need to like educate myself and know what I'm talking about.
It's once again, it's just fun. It's not like.
No, Richard, I have to win.
Oh, okay. Well, watch out for Iron Fist and Spider-Man.
I did see one cool move as Mr. Incredible, where Mr. Incredible can grab two people and like smash them together. Yeah, that's cool as hell.
I thought that was very cool.
No idea like how effective it is or whatever, but just the concept seems.
Everyone is really cool in that game. They all have very interesting moves or abilities that work for every one of those characters. But yeah.
And by the way, all the Marvel fighters, all the Marvel heroes like fighting each other in a hero shooter makes more sense than multiverses. So there's another lesson.
Right, absolutely.
There's another lesson. Just like all the heroes in Injustice fighting each other also makes more sense because there was precedence for that in the comics and whatnot. But still, just like that makes more sense because they're all like superheroes that fight things. They're not people that go in a van and smoke weed and eat dog snacks. Anyway, okay. Anything else?
Nope, that is all.
Follow us, youtube.com/gaming discourse, patreon.com/thegaming discourse. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.